Hello ladies and gentlemen of the internet, I am Jack of all trades, and in this video I'm going to be discussing my thoughts on Bendy and the Ink Machine Chapter 5. So Chapter 5 came out, I like it, but I'm sorry, what?
The truth is, you were always so good at pushing, old friend. Pushing me to do the right thing. You should have pushed a little harder. Henry, come visit the old workshop. There's something I need to show you.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
Seriously, what? The ending and defeating Bendy just by showing 2 words? I don't entirely know what to make of this, and there's a bunch of questions that the series has left completely unanswered, some that it has answered, and this video is just going to be me putting some of my ideas and some theories out there for other people to consider. So, a theory that's been around for quite a while, I think since Chapter 3, perhaps since Chapter 2, the theory that Henry is Bendy, or a Bendy, shall we say. This became a lot more prominent as of Chapter 4, after the reveal of Alice, Susie Campbell Alice, and then Alison Pendle Alice, a seemingly evil Alice and a good Alice. And we had just finished fighting at that point, somewhat evil Boris, and we get introduced to a good Boris. So what about Bendy? There's already an evil Bendy, the Bendy we've seen throughout the entire game, yet there never appears a quote-unquote good Bendy. I believe it's best to start at the beginning of this theory, anyway. So, at the end of Chapter 1, when Henry comes across the final room in the chapter with the coffins and sort of pentagram on the floor, I mean, it started off as a pentagram, but after the major visual updates, the Meatly team seems to have changed it to something more akin to a transmutation circle. No, just... I love that show, but no. It being a transmutation circle fits more with one of Thomas Connor's tapes in Chapter 5, saying that Joey had gone from engineering and science with the ink machine to something more like magic, which he insists is the same thing, which is pretty similar to, alchemy and transmuting, with, I suppose, technically being a science? Anyway, at the end of the chapter, when you walk over the circle, which you are forced to do in the game, you cannot go around it, you get black out, and you get these flashes of different imagery that other people have dissected, and MatPat's done theories on that, and you fall to the ground. However, when you wake up at the start of Chapter 2, there's ink splattered all around your field of vision that wasn't there when you fell down. Strange. Throughout the chapter, whenever you take damage, ink once again splatters on your face or around your field of vision. This could be attributed to the creatures inflicting damage upon you. The Searchers are made of ink, so that could be the reason why. But throughout the game, when you take damage from other things, such as Bertram Piedmont's giant mechanical contraption, that's not made of ink. Yeah, when you're hit by it, you still get the splatter, and when Sammy attacks you in Chapter 5 with his axe, you still get the splatter. So I doubt it's as a result of the things being made of ink. More likely, you being made of ink. Continuing on with the taking damage, once you eventually die in the game, you find yourself in a swirling well of voices. And Once you make your way out, you appear at a Bendy statue. This fits pretty closely with what Susie Campbell's version of Alice tells us about the ink being a part of this conglomerate. At the end of chapter 2, when Sammy Lawrence captures you and ties you up for sacrifice to Bendy, he says,
"You look familiar to me. That face."
Now this is interesting to me, because surely if you look like Henry had worked with, surely he would recognize you and have more of a moment there, instead of just...
"You look familiar to me. That face. Not now, for our Lord is calling to us, my little sheep."
And equally, if you look like Bendy, his Lord and Saviour, why would he be sacrificing you to Bendy? It doesn't quite add up there. Sammy is clearly a worshipper of Bendy, with his legion of lost ones and searchers sort of following him until his death. Yet, when you encounter him in chapter 5, he talks to you as if you are Bendy, saying things like,
"Betrayed, abandoned. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you left me to rot. You lied to me. You said I'd be free."
Seeing how he once worshipped Bendy, it seems that his outlook has sort of changed since he was seemingly attacked by him. Furthermore, throughout the game, you seem to survive an impossible amount of damage, such as falling from great heights, multiple hits from an axe if you're not particularly good during the Sammy fight, and yet you just heal. Damage doesn't seem to be permanent. Okay, so this all implies that Henry is seemingly at minimum composed of ink, but I mean, in that case he might as well just be one of the searchers or the lost ones. But continuing on, here's the reason I think he is a Bendy. When you encounter Sammy in chapter 5, he talks to you as if you are Bendy, his lord, the person he used to worship.
"Betrayed, abandoned. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you left me to rot. You lied to me. You said I'd be free."
But he didn't seem to recognize you as Bendy, he didn't address you as Bendy back in chapter 2, so it would seem that you've changed over time. Furthermore, in chapter 3, back at Boris's safe house, there's a hidden message on the mirror. Now this mirror caught my attention the first time playing through chapter 3, as the cracks on it look as if someone's punched it several times, with circles at the point of impact and the cracks expanding out from that. Once you beat chapter 5 and you look at the mirror again through the spyglass, magnifying glass thing, you get a message saying, "Who am I now?" This says to me that Henry has changed throughout the course of the game. From himself, at the beginning, then once he's stepped on the transmutation circle, begins to change into Bendy, or something similar to Bendy, so that to the point that in chapter 5, Sammy now recognizes you as Bendy. A further point adding credence to this is Allison saying, "We don't know what you are," in chapter 5. They do lock you up as they may recognize your general shape being similar to the ink demon. Oh, this is dangerous. I really like this theory, but there's two major points against it that I've come across so far. First off being, in chapter 1, prior to stepping upon the transmutation circle, you do survive a great fall. This could just be the ink breaking your fall at the bottom, but I don't really know. However, unlike the rest of the game when you take damage and ink splatters the edge of your field of vision, that doesn't happen here. So, I'm not entirely sure. Also, it would appear that you are still somewhat recognizable as Henry before the start of Chapter 4, when you're in the lift with Boris and Alice sends it careening down to the bottom of the shaft. She says, "I know who you are, and I know why you're here." She even calls you by name. Some other points to consider aside from this theory is the mysterious writing throughout the studio. I was initially confused as to who was writing it, but at this point, I think it's pretty clear that it's Henry, in previous iterations of the time loop, who's written all these messages and warnings and motivation on the walls throughout the studio. It's not entirely clear why you can only see them through the looking glass, but here's my main reasons for why I think it's Henry. At the very beginning of Chapter 1, once the loop resets and you have the glass to actually see these, there's a message written on a Boris poster, and this is written in Boris's safe house and in other Boris posters throughout the game. "Sorry, buddy." This is seemingly in reference to Boris's unfortunate fate. For one, Henry's saying sorry that he couldn't save him. But buddy, because that's what Henry refers to him as throughout the game. The tallies at the beginning of Chapter 1 as well, I was going to count them up to figure out how many iterations of the loop there had been at that point. But it doesn't entirely appear Henry knows how tallies work, so I'm not gonna try and figure it out. One message in the game states that reliving the past does not change it, once again enforcing the idea that the time loop can't be changed. You're forced through the same situation over and over again. Further adding to this, before you encounter Bertram Piedmont, you can find a message that says, "Again and again, round and around," which seemingly does link up with Bertram himself being one of those octopus carousel round and round rides, but also it's a loop, it's a circle, he's doing the same thing every time. At the beginning of Chapter 5 in Henry's cell, these are perhaps some of the more interesting scribblings written on the walls. The largest one saying, "It's inside the vault," referring to the end film reel, is interesting, as it would appear that Henry doesn't entirely remember how the loop goes every time, because by the time he gets to the vault, it's not there. It's in the massive ink machine, it's in Bendy's lair. So why does he say, "It's inside the vault," instead of, "It's in Bendy's lair"? It's strange. It does seem like he doesn't remember how the story ends, how the loop ends before it resets. Looking further on the wall, we see messages saying things such as, "Let me out of here. So many questions. Don't go through the door. What door? Follow me." Henry leaving messages for himself, trying to help himself escape the loop in the next iteration. However, one key point seems to indicate that Henry isn't entirely sane anymore. Or at least in some iterations of the loop, his memory fluctuates. As, "Don't go through the door. Don't just score it out." As if he's changed his mind. A message below it says, "What door?" He says, "I know the way and follow me," telling the next version of himself to follow these hints and instructions to help find their way through this labyrinth and get through the story and escape. There's drawings of doors and the spoon. It's insane. Further hinting to his lack of memory or awareness is the doodles that he's done. These doodles have been done recently, as we hear in the audio logs that you can find on the Joey Drew Studios YouTube channel. Henry's been spending his time in the cell doodling. Yet, when you look at it through the spyglass, you can see a message that says, "You draw beautifully." But Henry himself drew beautifully, so is this another version of him in the loop telling him that he draws well, or is this him just being an egotist and patting himself on the back? Or is this him not remembering who drew them. It's strange, and definitely worth considering and bearing in mind when thinking about this game.
And something that would seem like a point against this theory is when Allison and Tom point out that they, being made of ink, can't pass through towards the main ink machine in Chapter 5, but you can. This would imply that you're human, thus ink creatures such as themselves can't go through the ink without losing themselves. However, as shown throughout the game, Bendy can travel through the ink quite easily. So perhaps if we're becoming a Bendy ourselves, we also have this ability, and thus, that's why we're able to travel through it, and they can't.
I have two final points I want to bring up before closing out the video, those being related to the ink machine. 1. At the start of Chapter 1, after you've turned on the pump switch and sorted everything out, and you go back to the machine before the Bendy jump scare, why does the Bendy jump scare happen? We initially thought, oh, because you turned on the machine and released this creature, but as it's implied throughout the game and confirmed in Chapter 5 by one of Thomas Connor's audio logs, Bendy was created long before the start of the game. So, why is he suddenly there? I think that Bendy might be the one who's sending the ink machine down, as in all the following chapters, there's an area where you can see the ink machine being lowered down on chains, before in Chapter 5 you see it land atop the massive ink machine layer of Bendy's. Then, in the final ending cutscene, after the credits, where we find out Henry's real name, we see the ink machine, or do we? Because this isn't the same ink machine as we see throughout the game. This is a rusted and seemingly damaged version of the original ink machine. This was the version used throughout Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, but with the first visual update, it was replaced by a new model. It could still be found in Chapter 3. On the staircase, you can see it behind some railings, but it's gone now. It's no longer there. Instead, we see this damaged version of it in Joey's flat, or apartment. And people have hacked the game to find a small toolbox in there, as if Joey is working on it. Well, these have been some of my thoughts and theories on Bendy and the Ink Machine Chapter 5. I'm gonna hopefully get this out, hopefully maybe on Halloween, if not, at least before the weekend after. I've been Jack of all trades. I hope you've enjoyed this video, listening to my ravings and mad ideas about this game. Until next time, I've been Jack of all trades. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to keep up with everything I'm doing on this channel. Bye!